Where is this error? No, no, that's. All right, welcome back, guys. How many times did we have to go through scrolling text logs? Well, no more. Right now, we're gonna learn how we're gonna set up logging in NiFi and how we can take advantage of NiFi capabilities to actually get a better view of the log. Instead of being reactive, you will be proactive to the error that pops up. We're also going to go over what type of logging we have, how can we manage that, and how can we customize that to attend our needs. So let's jump into it. All right, NiFi logging, and how does that work, and why should we talk about it? Why is this so important? Well, I think logging is crucial to understand how your application functions, and it has a purpose. And let's see how we can use logging to fit our needs. But before that, we have to understand how logging works in NiFi and what are the main logging components. So to start with, NiFi uses logback library to handle logging. By default, the logs are written to your base installation folder and in the subfolder called log. You can change that, and we can see how we can actually change that location. Logback setup changes do not require a restart as compared to other changes, let's say the bootstrap or the configuration files. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over the three main logs that we have into our NiFi installation. So for that, let me just jump back into my local folder installation. So you remember in I think 2 tutorials back, before we went over the components, we talked about how we can install NiFi and where did we install it. So by default, I personally install it in opt.NiFi. And here, if we look, we have a folder called logs. So this is where the logs by default will be created. So let's jump into it and examine the logs that we have here. All right, so we can see that we have first log, NiFi bootstrap log. The NiFi bootstrap log, it's responsible to hold all system and system related information logs, warning, debug. When you start your instance, you allocate resources and other stuff. And if something goes wrong, this is where you're going to go and look for it when you're going to get a message that NiFi didn't start, whatever. Then we have the NiFi user log. You see, this is let's say this is an older version of the log, but we're going to get into that. Let's explain what the NiFi user log is. So the NiFi user log is responsible to hold all user interaction with the UI, which relates into REST API backend calls with the NiFi installation. So web authentication, user changes, the security policy and other stuff. And then we have NiFi app log. This is our main log, I would say. This is the log that will carry all the information of your NiFi runtime, such as processor, process group, controllers. All that stuff is going to be here, and that's why you see there's so many copies of it. Cool. So those are the three main logs. Now let's go and find out where can we change this the configuration for these logs, and how does that reflect into our NiFi installation. So remember, we're in our home NiFi installation in logs. We have to go back one level and go to configuration folder. So you see this .conf, we have it here. And here we have a file called logback.xml. So this is a file where NiFi looks into to see where should I write the log, what are the log levels, what are the log patterns, and other stuff. But we're gonna cover that in details. So to make it easy for the eye, what I'll do, let me open Finder, and in Finder we're gonna control command. Actually, it's Shift Command G and open the OPT into our Finder. And here, jump into conf. Where is it? Logback. All right, cool. So let's open with VS Code. Cool. So this is an XML file. And here we can see we have a couple of appenders. And the main ones are the app file, which we talked about, the application log, the user file, the user log, bootstrap file, and then the console. We're just gonna cover this tree, and we're gonna go inside them and see what are their attributes and what can we change to, let's say, to make the installation to address our needs. So first, the file, or where he will write the initial logs. This is the home directory plus the log location and then the final file. If you guys saw here, if we go back to the logs folder, let me clear this on, we can start from the top. You can see here we have copies here of the logs. So these are older logs. There is configuration in the NiFi config in the logback that if the file reaches 100 megs, then he will have to roll it forward. What that means is he will indate that file and he will start a new log. He will archive that log when it reaches 100 megs, and then he will create a new entry. And that's where the new entry is always instantiated with this name. And the archived one, it will be instantiated with this pattern here, you see? Now, the max file, you can set this one. You can put how big you want it, 10 gigs, whatever. But keep in mind, they're big files. They're heavy to move. Probably smaller files are wiser, but that's up to your system. The max history attribute, this pretty much says, like the information here says, it keeps 30 log files worth of history. If you'll put here 300, you'll have 300 times 100 megs. So you have to be mindful of that. And then we have the writer class, how it's going to write the logs outside, and the pattern used. So you're going to have the date, the level of the error, if it's info debugging error, whatever it is, the thread, and the logger message. So that's what he's going to speed up line by line. Cool. This is the user file. In general, all of them, they're like 90% similar. The only thing that changes is the location of the files that he's going to spit messages out. The pattern, you see, it's similar. The history is there. This one does not have the max file size, but the history is there. And the bootstrap, pretty much the same. The history, it's smaller because these files, they're not frequently written to. It's only when you start your instance and whenever you get some system error, such as, let's say, out of memory. And the location. Now, let's see how we can make some changes to this file, because we said we don't have to restart, and actually reflect in our installation. So what we're going to do for this one, I'm just going to say, okay, I want you to write files to a new folder location. So I'll edit this as says new folder. Cool. And let's save it. All right, now it's saved. So if we jump back in the command line and we already in the log folder, we just see right now we have a new folder called new logs. All right. And we have the logs written to the new logs. Now let's go and revert our changes. So what we're going to do, we're going to remove this new folder. So what I'll do, and leave it as default. Save this file. Cool. Now, go back to our main folder. So we are in our logs. And you remember we had this change that we had the new folder to cater for our app logs. Go back. Now you can see that a new app file was generated following the new changes in the properties. So let's get rid of that new folder and whatever comes in it. Cool. Now, let's open our canvas and see how we can consume this data using NiFi and then derive some insights from it, becoming a bit of proactive instead of reacting when dealing with logs. All right, cool. Now that we reverted back to log to its default, let's go ahead and do the following. Let's parse the content log using NiFi. So what I'll do, I'll grab on the canvas a processor called tail file. You know, Linux, there is a Linux command that does the same with the same name. Pretty much tails the content of a file. And then we're going to link it to a processor called split text. So going inside tail file, this one has multiple properties, but what we're going to touch right now, it's files to tail. So this one has the ability to tail one or multiple files. So we're just going to stick with single, and we're going to tail this particular file. So in our case, we have to give it the full path. So it's opt a NiFi and then logs. Cool. And the rest stays the same. Now we're going to connect them on a success relationship. And I'll start this processor. So you can see we're already getting data in. Looking at this data, if we're going to look into it, you're going to see it's sort of a blob of data, multiple lines. Yeah. It's really hard to parse and understand and read. But what we want to do now, we want to split this data line by line. So we're going to tell them, hey, split it by line. Split counts equals to 1. So each line it's going to give us a new flow file. After we do this one, it will give us multiple lines, and we want to extract some information from it, and we want to route each line with a status to a particular route. So for this one, we're going to drag a processor on canvas called route on content. So after the split, we're going to create the success connection on splits. The other two connections, we're going to relationships, not connections. We're going to terminate them. So just get rid of the original, and if any failures, get rid of them as well. Now, if we start this one, see we get much higher number of lines. So this is good. Looking inside, we can see that we have one per line. So that's nice. Cool. Now, up to the next step. On the route attribute, I want to create 4 more properties. Each property will relate to a type a type of logging. So what we're going to do here, we're going to click content must contain match. Must not be exactly. If we put exactly, we have to match exactly what's in a row. So what we're going to do here, we're going to add a property name called error with value of error. And then we're going to get info. Typo. The value of info. What am I doing, buddy? And then we're gonna add debug. Sorry about it. Fat fingers. With a value of debug. And finally, we got error, info, debug, and warn. So these are the main. Am I missing something? Or none? None, we're not going to look into it. So if the way you can find out the levels of errors, you can go here and the bulletin levels will show up here. You got warn, info, warn, and none. Yeah, none. We're not going to choose none. Now that we have this will give us, you see, multiple output connections based on our routing. So we're going to add a dummy log attribute. Log attribute. Is it? No. Log attribute processor. I'm gonna attach to it, and then we're gonna route the ones we don't really want to demonstrate right now. Debug, info, and warn. Keep in mind, I could have bundled them all into one, just saying, oh, just go to this one. But for the purpose of this demo, I don't want to do that. I want to demonstrate and see how each type of error gets sent, or notification gets sent to its route. And here you see we still have a validation error because we still have two connections, output connection, error and unmatch. We're going to jump into it and we're going to terminate the unmatch. And in case of an error, we're going to have to link it to a downstream component as well. So for this one, we're going to add a Grok extract. And everything that comes with an error, I want this to be parsed using this Grok definition or this processor. We're going to add this Grok definition here. So I have it ready on my notes. Not a Grok expert, so I wouldn't be able to write this by head. Put this in the description of the link. As a matter of fact, I'll put the template of the NiFi demo in the link so you guys can go and download it and play with it as you wish. And here we're just going to leave it as it is. We're going to tell him, okay, whatever you parse out, I want you to split it into the destination as flow file attribute. So we're now going to put it back into the payload. Cool. Now that we have this, let's start the route on content. So right now we don't have any errors. We just have a debug, warn. Actually, let me just stop this one. So actually we can separate it. So we have info, debug. Again, obviously this is warn here only. So because we selected two. Sorry, my bad. Warn actually only. And let's let some other messages flow in. So for now, we don't have any error. So kind of breaks our legs. We want to demonstrate how an error is caught up. So we can go over the attributes. So let's generate an error. We're going to say generate flow file. And then we're going to add a JSON split. Or a split JSON. I'm going to feed this one an empty payload and ask him to split it. And will automatically give me a fail. So that's how I'll trigger a failure. I'm going to terminate the outputs of this. Make this one run once. Oh, you run in multiple dice, not just one. Let me empty this queue really quick. Sorry guys, I'm running with it. And run once. All right, so a single flow file. And then let's start this JSON. We get an error here automatically. We already got an error in our flow as the outcome of that route on error. Let's dissect this flow file and its content. We look at this flow file. You can see it comes with a series of new attributes that are prefixed with Grok. So everything that the Grok expression will extract, we will have them here. Like where they are? No attributes. Oh, sorry. There's no extracted attributes because we haven't passed it through. So that's my mistake. Now, because I have to add new downstream processors in order for the previous processor to do the work. Otherwise, we still get this relationship matched. It's invalid. So what I'll do here, just to put a cherry on a cake, I'll add a Slack notification here. So we're going to say put Slack. Cool. Here, we're going to link it on a matched relation. Cool. Jumping inside, we're going to say unmatched, terminate. And now we're going to run this. And now we're going to get the Grok one, the Grok prefix attributes. Looking inside the attributes, we can see that, yep, indeed, we get Grok prefix attributes. You see, we get some information such as the class, the error, the message. We can even go deeper into this and extract more information about it, like the processor ID and the separate error. It's clear it did not have a valid JSON content, so that's why it fails. And the thread and the timestamp of it run. So for now, we have everything we kind of need. Now, to make this even smarter, I want to integrate this with Slack. So what I did, I already went and I have a Slack channel for my demos. I have a webhook URL here that I populate. The webhook text that we're gonna give it to it. So we're gonna construct a text, let's say a Slack text, using the incoming Grok attributes extracted. So we have pretty much, hi, an error occurred this time, run by this service with this message. The next thing we want to add, the channel. So if I'll open my Slack channel here, so this is going to come into this demo logging, right? All right, so let's save this, apply. And there are some validation issues here because obviously the Slack has a downstream connection as well. So let's terminate this one. So now let's add this and start. Going back to our Slack, we can see that here is sent error saying, hey, at this time, this particular service, we can do a better job with formatting the message so it can be more meaningful. But for now, I think this is sufficient. The error message is the following. Cool. So that kind of wraps up our demo of how we can, let me just actually save this. How we can extract logs from NiFi using NiFi itself and create some intelligence behind it. You know, integrate with systems, putting into the database, getting understanding of how our flow operates instead of us just being, by chasing this red buttons here, or I don't know, scrolling to the bulletins to see what it is. It's not, you want to integrate it with your tooling that you have as a data engineer. Cool. So just to review what we did in this tutorial, we went over the options that we have with logins. We saw how we can change the logs. How can we revert it back? We understand now that there's not a requirement of us restarting the NiFi instance when we do so. So that will automatically be applied. We understand what NiFi Bootstrap logs into, the NiFi user log and what is it serving, what it serves for, and the most important one, the NiFi application logs. We saw how we can easily use Grok processor to extract data and put it into a semi-normalized form. And at the end of the cherry on the cake, we added a Slack integration. If you guys enjoy this content, give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel good and also helps the channel to grow. And I'll try my best to bring new content and keep you guys more entertained. Until next time.